What's happening, everybody? Welcome to the Art Studio. I'm Charles Maring, and today, look what I have in my hands. This is a Lumix S1 with a Sigma 14 to 24 2.8 art lens, and I got to spend a little bit of time with this lens recently and put it through the paces a little bit. Got lots of photographs to pull up and share, so stay tuned. So I want to say thank you to Sigma for sending this lens out to me and allowing me to spend a little bit of time with it. I have to send it back tomorrow, so I thought before I do that, let's do a little bit of a tech talk, share some photographs. At least I can share some insight to my experiences with it. We are in the thick of the kind of COVID-19 coronavirus scenario. I hope everybody's safe out there. We're doing fine. We are at home, but the state has mandated that we close our business and won't be opening anytime soon. So normally we'd be photographing weddings and events this time of year, but that said, we cannot do that. So we won't have any people photography or portraits and things of that nature to share. But I have been out in the wild doing lots of nature and fine art photography recently and just making the most of our time that we have off to get out and do things that I love to do and don't always have the time to. So that said, let's take a look at the lens in a little more detail. Get it off the tripod here. As you can see, this is a little bit of a smaller lens compared to some of the Sigma Art series of lenses. It looks almost a little fisheye here, but it's not. It's rectilinear. So as long as you keep the camera level, you will not see any warping in your walls or tight spaces or anything like that. I've experienced that, which has been great. On the side here, we also have the ability to switch from manual to autofocus, a little switch here. And another cool thing, there is it says AFL, and what I believe I figured out is that it's focus locking. So let's say you are focusing on something and you just want to be able to hold that focus. You can tap here to focus and then push the button with your thumb, and now you're locked into place. And no matter what you do, you won't lose focus if you tap and move it. So kind of a nice little feature there, and it's a pretty hefty piece of glass. I love the smoothness of both the zoom and the focus capabilities here. When it comes to autofocus, I had no issues with it, worked with it in zone oval focus for the most part. That said, I also was working in pretty decent lighting conditions for the most part as well, as you'll see in the photographs here. So I didn't really get to put it through the paces in extreme low light or anything like that, but was pretty impressed with its focus capabilities for autofocus and definitely for manual focus on these Lumix cameras as well if we're doing any kind of video. So that said, let's dive into a few photographs here. This is all being filmed, I should tell you, in HD via a Sling Studio setup from several other Lumix Micro Four Thirds cameras. That's how I'm able to switch angles here. If you want to see them in more detail, I'll put a link below so that you can visit my blog, which is www.togetherinstyle.com, and that'll allow you to bring them up full screen if you want to dive into some of the details as well. You can go behind the scenes of these stories also, and I'll put a link above for that throughout the videos, and you can actually see videos related to these stories as well via our vlog and some photo walk videos that I've been doing. So that said, let's take a look here. We were out in Oceanside, California, and there was this remarkable day. It was extremely cloudy. We hit kind of a few rainy days when we were out there, but I got out on the beach and walked a little bit with my Lumix GH5 and captured a whole bunch of images, but I also got out with my S1 and this 14 to 24, and I thought I'd share some of the photographs that I took there with this. Now, I tend to process my photographs in Lightroom creatively. I am an artist, not just somebody who's a historian telling truthful storytelling photographs, but I also do a lot of photo manipulation to my work. And so I do have a few raw files next to the processed files I'll share with you along the way as well, because I think that it would be good for you guys to kind of get an idea of what these look like when they're processed also as we go through this journey together. So again, diving right in. I was walking the beach and happened to stumble upon this patch of seaweed, and I thought to myself, man, this could be really interesting as a subject. So getting in really close with the 14 to 24, I'm at 22 millimeters at 2.8. As you can see here, extremely flat, cloudy, actually rainy day even. And I want to share with you not only this process file, but give you a glimpse of what the raw file looks like and where we were with this. Now, this was shot in kind of a flatter profile, so you don't get that punch and color saturation. Obviously, I punched the color, added a whole bunch of contrast, a little bit of clarity, a little bit of texture in here to really make it pop and sing. And that's what you're seeing in the final processed photograph here. I should say that this lens is 2.8 throughout the zoom as well, which is a really nice thing. Here you can see, just happened to look over, I saw a squirrel kind of working the beach here and capturing him just a little bit creatively here. And we'll just kind of zoom in, give you kind of a close-up detail. This is on the Lumix S1, 22 millimeter. I am at ISO 50. 1/400th of a second at 2.8. Let's move on. Just to show you kind of the scope of how wide this lens does get as well. This is actually at 15 millimeters, just kind of showcasing the seaweed as the beginning of our story here as we start to dive into some of the details. You know, as I walked the beach that day, oh yes, and you can see also the raw file here, just to see how gloomy it really was. Yes, a little post-processing really goes a long way. And what I do love about the Lumix cameras is they have this really great raw file. It's why I work in RAW, so that I can pull in all of this dynamic range when I'm processing the photographs. I also want to talk a little bit along the way about my thought process. I am an abstract painter as well, as you can see from the paintings in my art studio here. So I've learned when I go out with a camera not to just look for what's obvious, what's in front of me, but to look for faces and look for abstract things that can allow the viewer to utilize their imagination when they look at my photography. And so I was looking down at the beach. I did a whole series of this on the Lumix GH5, but I also captured a few with this lens and the S1. And isn't this wild how the rocks on the beach in Oceanside would be scattered across the entire beach, but the waves would come in and change it constantly. And I kept seeing faces in the sand and people. Again, this is with the 14 to 24 at 17 millimeter. I also like to get really low with this lens, I have found. So what I'll do a lot of times when I'm working with this lens, when I want to showcase details like all of this seaweed and things that are on the beach here, is I'll flip up the back screen here on my Lumix S1, and I will literally get as low as possible to where the camera is literally the base of it touching the sand here. And you can see what happens when I do that is we tend to get this really crazy fall off where you see kind of the detail in one section, and then you can see at 2.8, you really, at 14 millimeter at 2.8, you really get a lot of depth of field working to your benefit so that it does bring the viewer's attention towards the subject, even though there is quite an expansive beach and scene and clouds and everything else. It really draws the viewer's attention exactly where we want them to look. And a lot of times that's my goal in my photographs as well, just to lead the viewer's attention just a little bit, and then you can see kind of the raw file here as well. I don't have all the raw files, but just to share a few along the way. Here again, same technique, getting really low, and you could see kind of some sudsy kind of area where the water came in and crossed this rock, and that's in focus, yet the rock is out of focus. I love this about this lens. The 2.8 feature, really that tight depth of field works out so beautifully. And again, looking at details here on the beach, just, you know, kind of like a piece of bark that was on the beach. We could zoom in and capture all this detail, and look how quickly it falls off right here from the subject. So I think that that's kind of a really unique feature to have 2.8 and a lens that is this wide. Love that about it. So a few shots here, and again, quickly show you a raw file and how much I did in the post-processing to bring this to life. So last week we were in Connecticut at our home, and I wanted to get out and actually create some photographs. We ended up going hiking in the woods to a place that I go quite often when I was a kid. A tornado ripped through this section of woods You can go behind the scenes of our vlog here, and again, I'll put a link to these photographs as well. But one of the things that I did differently, that I do often, I should mention to you, is that I will often work in RAW plus JPEG with my Lumix cameras. And what I'll do is I will actually have the camera set up to capture the RAW file, and then I'll go in and I'll switch the LCD and the EVF inside and the color settings or color modes to L monochrome. And what I'm seeing on the back of the camera is L monochrome. What I'm seeing through the viewfinder is L monochrome. But when I get home, I have the luxury of having an L monochrome JPEG and then have a RAW file in color as well. And it's just a lot of fun to kind of work in black and white sometimes and just feel artsy and in that moment as you do it. I highly suggest you consider doing something like that because it will change what you see and how you think and process, and it will bring some joy to the photographic process, something a little different for you. And I want to show you how we can process things uniquely too. Now, again, here I am in the woods. All I'm doing is looking around and I'm like, okay, there's trees, pretty boring subject matter, right? But what I realized is that there are ways to look at trees a little bit differently. And in the image that you see here, I'm looking for faces again. I'm looking for abstracts. I'm looking for something that is unique and different. So you'll see in the video, if you go to take a look at it, that I am literally this close to the tree with this lens. The close focus on this is remarkable. So I'm literally getting in as close as I possibly can to that tree when I'm capturing these details. Really enjoyed about it, how close you can get to your subjects, and yet you've got this incredibly wide lens. So kind of cool in that way. Walking through the woods a little bit further, again, working in L monochrome. L monochrome just gives this beautiful, contrasty, kind of crushes the blacks a little bit kind of look to things. I'll show you the RAW file here as well, and you can see, you know, beautiful color and whatnot, but I just love that L monochrome look. I love it in video as well. I should mention, I end up doing quite a bit of video work in black and white using that mode. Moving forward, again, just looking for abstracts in the tree bark, and here it looked to me like there was almost a face, missing kind of one eye, maybe a little Picasso-esque in feel. And you can see people writing on the tree here. This is the RAW file, this is the color version, and I had cropped in just a little bit. But again, getting extremely close with this lens. Again, here, looking for faces, looking for something unique that's going to transform the shot into something different. So here's my wife. She'll follow me a lot of times, and she's got a Lumix GH5 here and a 12-60. And she'll be capturing the same scene in L monochrome in video so that we can take you behind the scenes of the story as well and have the photographs match up with the video content. And you can see just kind of how wide this is of her standing in the woods. A tornado had come through this section, here's the RAW file, of woods a couple of years ago and just literally knocked out everything. And, you know, kind of like how coronavirus is kind of twisting through our lives right now. And so I did a little segment called Amongst the Fallen because I realized I was amongst all of these fallen trees, and it just kind of made me think about all of that. And I think sometimes that's why I do end up looking inward and looking for unique abstracts and whatnot. Just a few tree roots that we are walking across along our way. You can see the RAW file here as well. One thing I love about working with a lens this wide, and this is at 14, is the framing of things in the wild as well. Like framing a stump on the left, yet you've still got your scene on the right, and you can see how loggers have come through and they're cutting up all of these trees and moving them in the RAW file here for you to take a peek at too. And you can see literally across the way here, there used to be the most beautiful pine forest. All of these were pine trees, hundreds of them. And now there's just hardly anything left. I'm going to zoom into some of this here and just kind of let you take a look at the detail. Again, there will be the ability to look at these in more detail later on my blog as well. A little RAW file for you there. You can see how much we're lifting the shadows, how much we're pushing things along the way here. Again, another shot of my wife right on the river there, Show you the wide perspective that this lens gives. You know, when I was looking at all the different logs and how the loggers had cut them, I was starting to see kind of shapes and whatnot, and this just kind of reminded me of a seagull. So a little different perspective. Again, I'm looking through the camera, seeing black and white, but I'm capturing also the color version because I'm working RAW plus JPEG. So just kind of fun to take a look at all these little stumps and look at textures and details. So this was a log that was laying, this had to be a 100-foot tree, just laying on its side here. And when I first looked at it, I said, oh, these are some cool textures. Maybe I'll just work with the texture. And then I started looking down below, and you could see little acorns had fallen in between the cracks and the crevices here. And I am so close to this log right now, capturing this little acorn here inside. And it just kind of gives you a perspective here of, you know, sometimes I just go out and I look for textures. Here's the raw file. I don't always look for a subject. So yeah, amongst the fallen, look at all the trees that had fallen from this tornado coming through and wiping everything out a couple of years ago. Another wide perspective with my wife to close here, and certainly the raw file for you to take a peek at too. So yeah, so this is kind of a perspective, some of the thought process that I go to when I'm out in the wild looking at different things, trying to bring a subject to life that is ordinarily a pretty boring subject. And that's a little bit of info on this lens as well. You know, I'm a big fan of these Sigma art lenses. I gotta say that. I've tested quite a few of them. They are incredibly sharp. And you know, whether you're shooting video or whether you're shooting stills, I think that they have a beautiful place here in our camera bag. They look up just equally well on the Lumix S1 as they do on the S1R. And I should say that I just got a Lumix 24 to 70 2.8. I'm going to be doing some work with this over the next few weeks, and I plan to bring a tech talk to you guys here and some photographs of taken with this lens as well. I hope you'll join me here for other things. Go behind the scenes of our vlog here on our channel at Together in Style. You can learn more about my credentials as a photographer, as an artist, both on my website at charlesmaring.com and also on our blog, which is really an art blog rather than geared towards photographers. It's geared towards creativity and art. Same thing that's here with our channel. But I do love technology and working with cameras, so I try to, anytime I get a little bit of insight to a new product that I think is impressive, I try to bring it to you guys via a tech talk as well. So that said, that's a wrap, everybody, on today, and definitely get out, take a look at this lens, Sigma 14 to 24 2.8 art. I think you'll be just as impressed with it as I was. Peace and love, everybody. You guys have a great one. Take care.